Welcome to another episode of Do Business, Do Life. Really excited to have my friends from Vantage Point on here today. We have Jeremy, we have Nick, we have Tim. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks.
Good to be here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Well, I believe every story has an origin story. And I think where we have to kick this off, guys, is a little place called the Shanty Rose. I mean, it's only fitting. And I do believe this is still rated as your number one establishment that you all have ever visited. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Right up there. Right up
I
there.
can't argue with that at all.
So for those listeners that have no clue what the Shanty Rose is, who wants to just explain the establishment so they get a visual?
Tim's a good color guy. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're the color guy, Tim. Have at it.
I'm the color guy, you said?
Yeah.
Well, the Shanty Rose is a place where you can walk in and both feel like welcomed and like you're about to get in a fight at the same time. The drinks are stiff and lobster is in the air. And, you hear the best Boston accents you'll ever hear in your life.
Yeah.
The rest you have to look up on your own for whoever's listening.
Yes.
And the roof cave in.
I feel like you nailed that, Tim.
Did
I feel like you nailed that. Yes. So fun story when I met the three guys on here. And by the way, welcome back if you're listening in. This is another Triad member spotlight. So I've been really looking forward to this conversation, guys. But we did a visit to a firm that we're all familiar with, the SHP guys out in Boston, and so had a great day. Sat down. It was really cool because it was easy to see the moment I sat down with the three of you, just growth mindset. You guys were sponges. You'd already been incredibly successful, but just the hunger to learn more and learn different frameworks that could help you scale and serve more people at a higher level. And so anyway, we have this great meeting, and then we walk. I believe it was Keith. Did any of the other guys join us, or was it just Keith? I think it was just Keith, wasn't it?
Yeah, just
Ryan. Ryan was there.
Oh, yeah, Ryan was there too.
Oh, Ryan on our team. Yeah, Ryan
yeah.
on our team. And then Keith from the SHP guys. And so we walk this is Plymouth, Mass, very close to Plymouth Rock for those that have been there. And so we walk, a couple blocks from their office. And we find a little hole in the wall called the Shanty Rose, and our lives were forever changed. And that was where a friendship was cemented. And it's just a fun memory because I think I get a text with the Shanty Rose mentioned at least once every 2 to 3 months with one of y'all on it. So it's a good time. But if you all circle back, and I feel like that was a bit of an inflection point when I saw your firm. You've got an office in Chicago. That's obviously Nick and Tim. There's an office in Jeremy, in St. Louis, where Jeremy holds the fort down, and Jeremy and Nick are brothers. And so, but you've been really successful, but I saw just kind of this almost light bulb turn on for you guys in that day and a half together. If we go back and just what things could you share with the financial advisor audience out there that were breakthroughs or learnings just at that very beginning of that relationship?
I guess I'd say, we were really growth minded, and we were in that phase where we were trying to figure out how do we grow efficiently, more than anything, because we weren't looking to change. We were there at SHP's office to hopefully get a couple tips, maybe, things we could take back to our office and implement to help us either grow the business or be more efficient. So we weren't really looking for a big change, but we definitely were growth minded, and we had big goals. We just didn't know the path to get there. We were talking about them and they were big. And then almost, surprisingly, you guys showed up and helped us with the path. So it's interesting when you set big goals and you talk about them, how you start to attract the people and the resources that you need. So we didn't really know what we didn't know until you guys helped us kind of lay it out. But we definitely had the right mindset, I think. And it was just a matter of, learning, and taking advice from people that were, 2 or 3 steps ahead of us.
Awesome.
What I'd add to that too is I think it just opened up my mind to a greater possibility where we'd seen, and networked with a lot of advisors and in offices that we're bringing in 50 to 100 million a year, doing great work, But when we met at SHP, it was bigger, obviously bringing in, over 250 million a year. And we thought, okay, this isn't as big of a hurdle as we might think. Like, this truly is possible. Like, 50 used to seem crazy. 100 million was crazy. And now we're meeting these guys and they're showing us the path, saying, yeah, you guys can absolutely do this. It's not like some magic fairy dust you need. It's, you need a path, structure, and some good guidance, and you guys will get there in no time. And so that was extremely motivating, encouraging, and they saw that in us, and you saw that in us really quickly, which it drove our confidence through the roof.
Yeah, we set out, Nick and I, at the beginning of that year. So every year so far as Vantage Point, we've had this motion we go through with our EOS implementer, where we set a theme for the year. And at the beginning of that year, our theme was Think Bigger. And a lot of times Nick and I have talked about, our origin story or how we got here. And there's not too much magic to it. It just kept, one thing after another kept arriving at our doorstep. And to Jeremy's point, and shout out to Chris Smith, if you talk about it enough, things start to happen. And I bet you, had we not had that theme and that mindset that year, I don't think that we would have been ready to receive some of the things you guys had to share with us.
That's awesome to hear, guys. And just kind of the theme that I'm hearing from all three of you, it's the quote that has been referenced more than once on this show. It's, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And just the intention, I think what's interesting, I hear a lot of humility, because it wasn't like you guys were floundering. I mean, we just talked through your numbers before we started recording here. Perfect timing to form a business, Nick and Tim. So it was January 2020. Well done. right before the world shuts down for a year. Which, by the way, Triad wasn't too far behind you. We were November 2020, so we were right in the mix of that as well. But so I'll run through this real quick just for context for the listeners. So 2020, your Chicago office brings in, you said, between 22 million of new assets that year. St. Louis office, which is Jeremy, which he will be clear to point out is a one-man office, right, Jeremy? Not a two-person office.
At that time, yes.
Yes. Okay. So there's some sibling rivalry that sometimes sneaks.
Don't get me started.
It could flare up here today. So 15 million St. Louis in 2020. So call it 35 million collectively. 2021, Chicago did 25 mil. St. Louis did 17. So now we're at 42 million collectively. 2022, Chicago did 30 mil. St. Louis did 20. So that's 50 mil. And then you all also brought on another firm that was linked to the Chicago office for another 8 mil. So that's 58 million. So we go 35 million, 42 million, 58 million. So you were already you guys were clipping through some pretty nice growth numbers. And I just love that you're in 2022, the theme was still Think Bigger. That was the 2022 theme?
That was 21.
Oh, 2021. Okay. And so I just love the humility.
Or no, it was 22.
22.
Yeah. Was it 22?
Yeah. It was 22.
Yeah, which was when we met, right?
Yep.
So it's really cool. And I've seen a very common theme with top performers in our space. It's almost as if, you've never arrived. You're a lifelong learner. You continue. We say check your ego at the door a lot here, because some of the most successful firms I've seen, they just are humble students their entire career. And that was who I saw walk into the room out there in Plymouth, Mass at SHP's office that day. And it's cool because now let's talk 2023. How are things looking this year? I know you guys have expanded the team, kind of built out the framework. I know you all are doing really well, but I know I feel like you're just getting started, because a lot of the coaching you're just starting to start to see come to fruition. But what's 2023 looking like for y'all?
Yeah, it's been in our St. Louis office. So when I met you guys in March of 22, when we were out there in Boston, I had myself and my assistant, Marie. She was a full-time assistant. And then we had just hired a part-time assistant. So there was, 2.5 of us. Today we've grown. We have 2 new advisors starting next month. So we've got, including myself, 12 team members now.
Wow.
So we're trying to grow efficiently. We're obviously growing quickly, but trying to do it really efficiently. Put the right people in the right positions, whether it's ops, sales, marketing, that type of thing. So probably quicker than I thought we would. Now, 3 of those are interns. One that is year-round, 2 that are summer interns. In fact, we just had a new admin start Wednesday. So we're growing quickly, but I think we're really, at least for our office, and I think with Nick and Tim, it's true, we're really building that infrastructure, getting kind of the framework so that we can really start to multiply and really grow on an efficient basis. We don't want to grow so quickly that we can't service the clients. And I think a lot of advisors run into that ceiling. They get maxed out and burnt out. And so I know for us, we're trying to be very, very diligent about who we're bringing on and when and what their role is.
Yeah. I love that. We'll circle back on that in a second, but I want to give Nick and Tim a second. So 2023, what are like if we look at the kind of the big moving parts, the changes, whether it's production growth, whether it's team members and kind of growing on that front, what's it look like for you guys?
We've, so Nick and I used to sit in on every client meeting together. So that's what we trained our clients to be used to, is 2 professionals in every meeting. So this is the first year where both of us will truly be like separate kind of rainmakers, if you will. And I think so far we have maybe 10 million of new assets placed and another 10 to 15 million pending potentially this year.
Wow.
And it's shaping up to be, again, one of our biggest years yet. But this is also the first year that we'll have a fully clean year of completely revamping what our kind of sales intro and onboarding process is with new clients. So I feel like we really caught a stride from that perspective. And a lot of things too that have allowed us to get there is building up our team, just like Jeremy's doing. So when we have, Nick, we have a team of full-time 6 people and then part-time 2 additional.
Yep.
And we have like 3.
Sorry, another one.
Yeah, 3 open job requisitions and an intern. So it's moving really fast.
Yeah, to go from 2020, it was Tim and I and our assistant Diane, and now the firm has, 3 offices, over 20 people, pacing for probably 80 to 100 million if we add up all the offices. And that's only truly so far like 4 really producing advisors. We're training more and bringing more up. So hopefully that really exponentially grows quickly. And that's been one of our biggest keys to growth, is like, there are only so many hours in the day that, the 4 main producers can meet people. We need to train, the next, set of lead advisors and have 4 in each office that are bringing in 10, 20, 30 million a year. And then obviously, like these guys are mentioning, have the infrastructure behind it. So yeah, it's exciting. I think this year is going to be a banner year for us compared to the last 2 or 3.
Well, the guys, I was just listening here. Like I said, it wasn't like you were slouches before, 35 to 42 to 58. But what you all just talked about is a double up here almost, 80 to 100. We'll see where it plays out. But to go from 50, 58 to 80 to 100, that's a massive jump. So let's take a second and let's talk about that. If you were to say, here are the 1, 2, 3 reasons that we believe led to that, was it simply the fleshing out the infrastructure so you all could focus more on revenue producing activities, or were there other things that led to that?
I think it's our competition. It's that we have $1 billion goal and neither office wants to lose to the other one. But
that helps.
You do know the competition, right, Brad? That first office to $1 billion between us and St. Louis, the loser charters the private jet to the destination of the winner's choice.
Anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the world. So Jeremy,
guys, that could get expensive quick.
I'm not worried about that because we're winning. So
the good news for Nick and Tim, there's a private airport right below my house, about a mile away. So it'll be a little cheaper for you guys, but Yeah, it makes it
So,
fun. Yeah.
so let's go ahead and memorialize this. This will be fun, guys, because we can look back on this interview a few years from now. So where are we at? Where's the leaderboard at? Total AUM on each side right now.
So we're about 150 total
About
in St. Louis.
190.
Yeah.
190, you said, Tim?
Mm-hmm.
And is this like a golf match where one started out ahead, so there's a handicap, or no?
No,
Don't
I'll
you
take
dare
them
mention that, Brad.
on.
Straight up. This is straight up, Brad. No handicap.
Straight up. Okay. Cool.
I'm going to
I
make
love
sure that my destination is very exotic to make up for the handicap.
Well, we were looking at Bora Bora flights for something fun. We were looking at inside a Triad, and those not private, commercial, are very expensive.
Yeah.
So Bora Bora could be a fun one for you, Jeremy. Just throw that one out there.
Very nice.
Yeah,
I
Bora
would be
Bora
quite
sounds
happy about
great.
that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Whether
Well,
you're
so-
in agreement or not, Jared, Tim has been telling our team that they're invited too. So it's going to be a really big bill.
So you can grow the AUM and the team and then just make it really expensive.
Yeah, it's going to be
There you
great. I can't wait.
Done.
Well, to answer your
Um,
question, Brad, I think your question was like, what would we attribute that big jump to, right? Like what's really gotten us there? I think it's a confluence of like several things in my opinion, but one that really stands out here in our office is like the messaging and the conviction and the authenticity of what we say. Like, yeah, sure. Being successful is great and having these milestones and looking back is great. But I think Nick and I and Jeremy too, really just got comfortable understanding that why are we doing this? We're doing this to impact people's lives. We're doing this to help families. We're doing this to help them reach some of their most important goals in life. And I think with a lot of your team's help and some of the messaging that some of the community members have helped us with, that authenticity, I think, has really shined through in everything that we do and the why behind what we do as well. So I think that's probably one of the banner things in our office that's made the difference. And I can tell, I don't know if you'd agree, Nick, but it's huge.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without question. Like, that the kind of leadership that you guys talk about at Triad, Chris Smith talks about, and just absorbing that and really truly believing in what we do and like going into every meeting, like, hey, I'm just here to serve you and help, which is interesting. Going back earlier in my career, it was, you would always hear, don't give away the farm. Like if you give all the answers to them in that first meeting, why would they come back? Well, what we do is so much more complex than what we can tell them in an hour. And so we went from, all right, giving so many answers to the now not giving hardly any. And the people were probably feeling like, wait a minute, they didn't answer anything. They just danced around it and said, you got to become a client. To truly just be interested in helping them and putting them on the right path and just being honest. Like, hey, I'll tell you, this is the answer to that question, but it's, what you really need is this to really impact your life and change your track for retirement. So just coming with that mindset and not at all trying to be salesy, which none of us are. We don't like that salesman kind of hat. It's, hey, we're there to help people and we know we're really good at what we do. But how do you take it from that to, all right, what's our process to really move the business forward too? We're helping these people. We're meeting a lot of people. I mean, there's so many times that we were just struggling where we'd meet a ton of people and we're like, hey, we're closing, 2 out of 10 or 4 out of 10, which is pretty good. But look at the 5 or 6 that walked out the door that we know were great prospects and really honing in on that language. And I remember first time we met Keith Ellis, he's like, you just got to work on the language. He's like, it's just a few words here and there and you guys, your closing ratio will go through the roof. And he was right. So yeah, I think there's just a lot of that. It's a conviction. It's a training. It's surrounding ourselves with really smart people, thinking bigger. That theme is pretty interesting. We're like, we want to think bigger, and then a month later, we met SHP. That just sort of happened. A referral from our marketing agency said, hey, meet these guys. They're just like you guys. I think you guys will hit it off. And then met you guys through that too. When I say you guys, Triad. And so it just sort of started to snowball and then getting in that community and meeting people that think bigger. And we've continued that. We've been on that search, to continue to do that, whether it's through our EOS group and going to a conference there and meeting people in different industries that are massively successful. It's been just a game changer and opening up our minds to like thinking bigger, expanding our horizons, personally, professionally, you name it.
Yeah. One of the themes I've seen in the community, it's been really cool. Like it's so humbling to just sometimes sit back on the community Zoom calls and observe the magic happening. And one of the themes I've seen kind of that you both just hit on is going into that first visit with the prospect. You kind of shared, I've got nowhere to get. I know that's a Chris Smith thing, like, hey, let's just be here and serve and let the conversation go where it goes. But also stepping into that conversation as a leader versus a financial advisor. And it's just the mindset is different. To your point, Nick, you're like, as a financial advisor, you're like trying to like kind of hoard information to make them kind of like need to come back to us. As a leader, you're stepping into that and saying, hey, here's what we're about. Here's what we're not about. If we can help you, we commit to serving you and, challenging you more than you've ever been challenged, but supporting you more than you've ever been supported. And that's like the dynamic that I see happening, which is so powerful because they need confidence. They need somebody that they can depend on as they navigate retirement and all the life changes. And it's just like the Amy Porterfield episode that just went live this week that we're recording this. She talks about Tony Robbins saying how much of leadership is just mindset. It's just mindset and switching to a different mindset. So do you guys feel that as well? Like it was just kind of a mindset shift, like light bulb moment went on and here's how we need to start showing up differently, or was there something else that made that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think the leadership discussion, it's really twofold. It's, we're being leaders for our clients, but we also have to be leaders for our team. And for me at first that was kind of an intimidating like word. It was like leadership that takes on a lot of ownership and a lot of responsibility when you're a leader. I mean, heck, I wasn't even the first one out of the womb, so I was a follower from day one.
Nick will agree with that.
Holding
he was
back
taking
so
all my
many
food
jokes
too,
right
by the
now.
way. Thanks a lot. That's why I'm 4 inches tall or shorter. But I think part of it was the mindset shift. It was, really you had to wrap my mind around like, yeah, what we do for clients, we really are leaders. I mean, we really are providing financial leadership. And then when you start to say that to prospects and clients, you really start to see their reaction is different. And all I can tell them, hey, there's a difference between, a typical advisor providing advice and leadership, kind of explain what that means. And they look at you differently, and it was definitely, it took, with Chris Smith, we worked on the leadership language, but it takes some time internally to internalize it, to say, what I do is really, really powerful, not just for, the clients, but my team as well. And so I had to take that shift of, working on myself as an individual to be a leader. And still am. I think it's a lifelong process, but it's definitely different. You look at it differently and you start to realize your impact. I mean, what we do makes a huge difference in people's lives. And I think being in the industry for 20 years, sometimes we forget how impactful it is because it's just our job, in a sense, but it's way more than a job or a career. It really helps people sleep at night, all that stuff. So it's definitely it was a mind shift, and it seems like a little shift, but I think it's a really big one in the bigger picture.
It's the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my life, Jeremy. I totally echo what you said. Like just making that shift to, all right, how can I show up as a leader in all facets of my life, and especially in this business? It was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Tim, to your credit, Tim, because Tim is, as you know, Brad and Jared, Tim's extremely smart, well-read, researches everything to the nth degree. And I think, years ago, you used to think that you had to tell everybody everything you knew, and to prove that you were smart because you were younger. And you're great. And I know you're authentic, because I know you, but in client meetings, sometimes I think you wanted to share your knowledge rather than that connection. And once you kind of switch to that in the last, 6 months, 9 months, you're just killing it. I mean, Tim's he called it heater season, and it's mostly because of him. Like heater season, we got clients coming in like crazy. The staff can't keep up, and that's a great problem to have.
Never leave a heater.
Yep. Never leave a heater.
Hey, that's wisdom right there for you listeners. Yeah. Yep. Right there.
Stay at the table.
Nick, you know what? You bring up a really good point there, Nick, because and I know Enneagram has been a big thing inside of our Triad community, and we've all kind of taken the test and geeked out on that. So we won't go too far down that, but I think it's really interesting as you look at the different personality types. Some of us are wired to be a bit more analytical. Like I'm very guilty of the guy that can hop down a Wikipedia rabbit hole and like look up 3 hours later and say like, what happened, right? And you nailed it. The word is connection. I mean, you can out spreadsheet people, you can out intellect people, but I think sometimes we forget as advisors, like to step out of financial advisor role. It's kind of the curse of knowledge, and like put yourself on the other side of the table. Like you walk into a doctor's office, they start speaking a bunch of Latin and like straight over your head, like all this doctor speak. You're actually gonna be like, well, yeah, he's smart, but I don't want to work with him because he makes me feel dumb. Whereas you go to like the doctor with great bedside manner that's like, hey, here's what it's called, but let me break it down to like what it really means. And like just talks to you like a regular guy. You're just going to feel so much deeper connection. Be like, that's my guy right there. I mean, that's how it works for all of us. But for some reason, we forget that when we put on financial advisor, you know, the suit, the jacket, whatever, and you walk into a meeting. So what, how did you, maybe I'll throw this one to you, Tim. How did you start to be aware of that and then call it break that habit a bit or have a different type of conversation?
Yeah, great question. I think also the way that we used to do work for new clients at the beginning was reminiscent of that feeling of needing to, share information and intellect and what we have the ability to do, because we used to basically do a comprehensive financial plan at the onset without having a commitment for an ongoing relationship from these clients. And I remember when, your team challenged us to make that change, I was like, there's no way. There's no way someone's going to agree to work with us to be this involved with their financial lives without knowing exactly how we can help them and what we do. Well, I was wrong. It's the exact opposite. It really is a mindset shift. I mean, I think it's that getting uncomfortable with like, why do I feel this way? Why is it that I'm showing up to this meeting and I feel the necessity to, totally skirt making a connection and instead beeline it to, well, let's talk about a proper tax distribution rate out of all of your different tax treated accounts. Like it doesn't matter. I'm here to help you. I'm here to do whatever in the world I can do to make your life easier and add value to your situation. And it's a confidence to know that we live and breathe this. We wake up every day and think about this. How can we do it better? How can we add more value to our clients' lives? I truly do feel as if we're at the forefront of what we do as financial planners, and we do it better than most people. And that's a gift to give. It's something that we can give to people all the time and impact their lives. And when it finally dawned on me that that's what we do, it took all the pressure off in even the first 2 hours of a conversation that we have with new clients. It's less about all these nuances of ways we can help them and more about like you would benefit, your life would be absolutely transformed if you had what we have to offer in your life. And that mindset shift it's like, I feel like I sit back in my chair more in client meetings and just like, I want to get to know you. I want to understand what's important to you. So, and having people around you more specifically that hold you to that standard too. So as Nick and I talked about this and the way we challenge each other, I mean, he straight up came to me and he was like, hey, Tim, I challenge you for the rest of this year to let authenticity be the center of all of your communications with clients, at workshops, with clients. Like, don't follow a script. Don't read bullet points. Don't memorize what you want to say. Just be authentic. And he held me to that standard and we checked in on it. And same thing with the Triad crew and the people that lift us up and support them. Like, I mean, truly, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And without that ability, I don't think I would have been able to see through that noise.
That's so cool. You know what you just triggered for me, Tim, as you were going through that, where you were like, kind of like, and you were a younger advisor too. And I remember being a young guy in this business and I was meeting with 55, 65-year-olds and I was 26, 27. and there's like a little bit of a imposter syndrome, you know,
100%.
it's like, wait, do I deserve to be here? You know, am I going to say something where they think I'm dumb or not qualified or whatever? And I almost feel like it's a bit of a defense mechanism, like a human defense mechanism of you hop into a meeting with the 55, 60, 65-year-old, you know, Matt immediately starts spouting tax rules and stuff that, you know, you can kind of like own the conversation, as opposed to your point, like getting uncomfortable, getting vulnerable, and truly connecting as a human. That's tougher. That's tougher work to do.
It's so hard.
Yeah. Do you feel that? Like, do you think defense mechanism? And I don't mean like you went in there and you're like trying to like show them up or anything, but I think just like if you observe human psychology, sometimes that probably plays out that way.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it. A defense mechanism is a great way to explain it. It's like I'm putting up this metaphorical shield to, hey, don't look at the 80% that I feel. The key word is that I feel like I don't have figured out. Just focus on this 20% that I know I have figured out.
Yes.
I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
That's and by the way, I've seen advisors that are 60, 65, 70. It's almost like hiding behind this shield of knowledge that protects them.
Yep.
So that's a really good call out. So I wrote down something else that I picked up there, and I'm going to a Spider-Man quote with great power comes great responsibility. I think I got that right.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at like you're stepping into this meeting now, and I heard one time it was a really successful couple, Brian and Shannon Miles, and they worked with the family office because they'd done really well for themselves. And they basically said one of the things that family office told them is, we are working on a financial plan and a legacy for the grandchildren that you haven't even met yet. And if you look at it through that lens and the power of the work you can do in 60 minutes, 90 minutes in your office with someone's life savings literally in your hands, and you can turn that into a plan that will outlive them and bless their grandchildren or great-grandchildren, that's insanely powerful. But you have to be looking through that lens, not the, oh, got to close a 500K case today, you know? And so is there any other thoughts that you all have there? Because I'm picking up a lot of that from you all, like, man, this is really powerful work we do. We're confident in the work we do. And with that, like, it's worth something, and it's going to take the joint responsibility of the other side of the desk of saying, hey, we want that too. So what are your guys' thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And we stole that line from them as well. We used that one.
Oh, do you use that? Nice.
Oh, yeah.
We use it all the time.
It's awesome.
Love it. How's it hit? How's it hit in meetings? Do you see like a little like light bulb or aha go on?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of things, you know, we say. It's funny, a lot of the meetings we're using language like that. There's one in particular recently where the husband and wife both kept going, oh, yeah, oh. You know, so it's like very like, they're having this like, wow, this is not what I expected kind of meeting. And that's what we don't want it to be. What they probably see literally right across the street from our office is Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley. There's another one in the building over there. I forget who it is, that they're sitting down. Each of them have their magic black box that they're going to beat the market, right? And they're going to get a different pitch as they go to each office until they come over to us. And we don't talk about our investment philosophy at all in that first meeting. So I think it is. It's for us, it's that mindset like we talked about before, like what are we trying to accomplish in this meeting, you know, and how are we different? And what is the end result for the client? You know, so it's great to talk high level about all the things we do, but okay, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you, Mr. and Mrs. Jones? Like if you work with us, ultimately, you know, we're going to empower you to live beyond what you thought in retirement, you know, beyond what you thought was possible in retirement. And that's kind of our brand manifesto. And so they start thinking like that. And what that does for you is we're going to take care of all these things in your, you know, our trademarked elevated retirement plan. We're going to take care of the taxes, the investments, the estate planning, make sure everything's coordinated, the insurance. And so that you can live your life. Like you worked for the last 40 years to save up. Now tell us about the things you want to do. Wouldn't it be great if you're on that beach in Mexico for 3 weeks, like you plan and you don't have to worry about what the market's doing, what your portfolio is doing, you know, should you be tax loss harvesting right now? Like, no, you just go and live, and we're here to take care of that. And to give them that clarity and confidence to know that, yeah, I don't have to worry about it. it's funny, this came up the other day and I forget if it was a client meeting or where, but that's fine if somebody doesn't want to hire us because they'll have just an okay retirement. And Tim had this one recently where they just could not get over paying the fee to hire our team. And they said, you know what? Yeah, we might not live a great retirement. We'll be okay. You just want an okay retirement, managing everything on your own, which is fine, and that probably works out well because you'll die sooner. When you have all that stress of worrying about the investments, the taxes, the legacy planning, the insurance, the Medicare, the Social Security, you're probably going to die earlier because you're stressing out about all these things. So it'll be okay. You won't run out of money. Where with us, you'll probably live longer and enjoy it more. And it's kind of funny, but if you stop and think about it, stress shortens your life. And if you have a team that's taking care of all the things that stress you out, you're going to do a lot better.
We're financial doctors.
That's right.
Just
I feel the compliance and suitability breathing down my neck right now.
That's okay. Nick's the chief compliance officer.
Hey, we are allowed to joke on these things, right? So to me, there's a couple ideas there. It's more of a what's possible meeting. I know that's some language I've heard quite a bit. Is there's one thing to crunch numbers on a spreadsheet and say, here's my income plan, and here's Social Security, and then we can get another 15, 20K on top of that. It's another thing to say, hey, do you want to just dream about what's possible and start with the end in mind and say, hey, back to the beach. So how many weeks would you be spending on a beach each year? Would it just be one trip? Could it be more trips? Like, what do you actually want? And then let's back into what it takes to get you there. And I feel like that's such a different conversation. You mentioned tax loss harvesting. Pat Quinn, who I know you all have had the pleasure of doing some training with, he does this exercise where he says, call up your brother and just go to this little, role play, and you're talking to your brother about something that's on your mind, and use the language that you would use when you talk with your brother. And it wouldn't be like, hey, I'm really staying up tonight, and I was just, I couldn't get to bed. It was like, I just couldn't get this tax loss harvesting thing out of my head. It just, I couldn't get to sleep. But that's how financial advisors speak all the time, right? As opposed to, hey, I'm trying to figure out, are we going to be able to spend the 2 weeks on the beach with the grandkids? And that's really important to me. And I'm wondering, do we have enough? And it's really kind of keeping me up at night because that's really important to me. That's the sort of conversation you would have with a brother or sister, And I just think sometimes we don't think like humans, like back to the curse of knowledge. It's like, that's not how people talk. So why do we talk that way so often in this business? So yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
I just had a quick story on kind of asking them what's possible. And one of the questions we ask them is, if money was no object, what's one thing you'd love to have or do in your retirement? And we asked that question. It was probably March, maybe, to as a referral. And the guy immediately said a plane. So he's a pilot, more of a recreational pilot, but he's like, I don't know if we can ever afford it or not. So of course we take note of that. Well, about a month later, we're meeting with existing clients that have been, they've probably been with us 8-9 years. They have a plane. He's like, by the way, we're selling our plane. And so I was like, well, I happen to know someone that wants to buy one. And I was able to connect 2 clients together with this guy to buy a plane that he never thought was even possible. So it's not a Learjet or anything, but it'll be perfect for him. So it's kind of cool.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, but that all stems from asking a different question.
Right.
That's how you uncover that versus, hey, how much income do you need on a monthly basis? It's basically solving with, if I look at so much of the work financial advisors do, obviously you've got to, if it's a math equation, you've got to get all the variables right, that you get the right answer on the other side of the equal sign. But essentially what you all are doing is you're starting on the other side of the equal sign and saying, what do you want the answer to be? Okay, now let's go retrofit the variables to get you there in the most efficient way. It's just such a different conversation where that's where the good stuff comes out of that conversation, not the let's figure out the variables on the front end and not know where we're going.
Yeah, it's like the way we talk about our planning is, all our competitors, Morgan Stanley, Stifel, Edward Jones, they're talking about their shiny object of this portfolio that's going to make 8% a year. We don't talk about rate of return or anything. We talk about, what do you need your money to do? What does it mean to you? We actually work it backwards. We actually start with your goals and what your need is and what you want to accomplish. And then we plug in the investments to accomplish it. It's a lot different than, hey, look at all these great portfolios. They don't really mean anything if it doesn't accomplish your goals.
And how much more fun is that as an advisor? I mean,
So much more
It's
fun.
way more fun. Yeah. I'd rather be a plain broker and, from client to client. But it is,
Well,
it actually makes our job easier, honestly, because, we do reviews. It's not about rate of return. It's like, oh, hey, you guys didn't beat the market last year, so I'm upset. It's never the conversation. It's like, hey, we've got your income plan, we've got your income bucket. Here's your income's protected. Last year was a really rough year in the market, but you didn't have to worry about it. You didn't have to lose sleep, and they'll tell us that, that they didn't have to think about it. And so that just goes back to the impact that we have on them. And it honestly really does make our job easier. If we do it right from the beginning, you don't have to backtrack and always feel like, oh, what am I going to do next for my client so I don't lose them? It's they have a plan. We're making sure their plan is efficient. Everything's in place the way it should be. And then we're just helping them guide them through the plan, and tweak it as needed, versus these wholesale changes, every month or every year, depending on what the market's doing. I mean, that's a stressful advisor if they're chasing returns every single year.
Yeah, Brad,
yeah,
I think it's you, Brad, that have said this in the past, like how you meet a client and those first few meetings that you spend with them and kind of the atmosphere of those is what sets the tone for your entire relationship with them. So it makes sense that, the vibe you set with them at those first couple of introductory meetings, that it's about relationships. It's about what's important to them. And that's what you're talking about at review meetings, not, hey, we're trailing the S&P by 0.50%. Are we going to be okay?
yeah. But the phrase we say is what brings them to you is what they expect from you. And so what brings them to you is we can beat the guy down the street or the S&P or whatever by 1% or 2%. Now you're selling, your value proposition is returns. And I compare that kind of to like going to the Kentucky Derby and picking winning horses. Yeah, I mean, you can research and say statistically this is the one that's going to win, and that's great until you pick the horse that doesn't win, and now they come back to you and they're like, "What the heck? I thought we were beating the market by 1 or 2%. What's going on here?" Now we're back to goal-based planning and building a proper plan. It's actually not about the returns. The Warren Buffett quote, which I know we talk a lot about in our community, we should throw this in the show notes, but I'll probably butcher this. It's insane to risk that which you have in order to attain that which you do not need. And how often do you all see that when somebody walks in your office the first time? They're heavily loaded up in high risk stocks, chasing returns. And it's like, dude, you have $3 million. Like you need like a 4% return a year to do everything in the world you want to do for the rest of your life. It's silly.
It's like driving a Ferrari in a school zone.
There you go. There you go. Don't
Don't
hit any
all the
kid.
time. That's literally my tagline for that.
Yeah. And all of this too, it makes our jobs easier when it's not only just the conversations and it's goal-oriented planning, but it's also obviously how we structure their assets to have safety for the things that they need sooner than later. But that changes. Like in 2008, I didn't have structure. I was an investment advisor, and we talk about that common enemy that, most advisors only give advice on the things you're getting directly paid for. And 90+% of the advisors in the industry only advise you on the investments. Well, I was that guy the first 10 years of my career. And when 2008 hit, it was horrible. I mean, it was just the phones wouldn't stop ringing. People hated us like you wouldn't believe, and because we didn't have a real plan to protect them and didn't have as many retirees at that time, but it didn't matter. When people lose 30, 40, 50% of their net worth, it's troublesome. So I knew then had to make a change. And fast forward, obviously, we had a massive bull market. But in 2020, I mean, we had people not calling panicking. There was literally 1 or 2 clients that were panicking, but people calling and saying, thank you. I get it now. We're in this bull market. We had some more conservative stuff, but completely protected that they would say, the market's up 20%. Like, do we really need that? It was only up 7. What about, these other things that are getting 20? And then in 2020, I mean, we had tons of calls, people saying, thank you so much. I can still retire when I want to retire. I can still go on those trips. I mean, COVID threw a wrench in that, but I can do what I want to do. It's not dictated by the stock market, which gives them peace of mind, and it makes our lives a hell of a lot easier. And last year too, I can count on one hand where people were a little bit, not even panicked or even calling concerned. And it was usually like, hey, I just need one of your pep talks. I know you're going to make me feel better.
Mm,
It's not like, what did you do? Because I heard that a lot.
right.
Like, what is happening? What did you do to my money? I'm like, well, by the way, there's something going on in the world that's beyond what I did, but I didn't do my job the way I should have. And it was a big, eye-opening experience for me. And like, I have to change my career path and what I do for my clients and how I serve them because I wasn't serving them in the right way. And luckily over the years, I've met some really good people that have helped mentor me, guide me, train me, and all of us. So we couldn't do it alone. Like surrounding ourselves with really great people is the thing that I'll never stop doing. If I can keep surrounding myself with people much smarter than me, which by the way is not hard to do, then we'll continue.
There was one in the womb. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was a good move by me in the womb. Surrounding me.
You started your mastermind group very early.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you were ahead of it.
You're welcome.
We did. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Her mom said that he was always sitting on my head. So, that's oxygen got to my brain. But
That is something I probably shouldn't say. So
I got to be honest. I don't know if I want to be the honorary triplet anymore.
yeah, it's rough.
This is
It was
getting
messy in there.
contentious.
Well, there's a few things there, Nick, but I think one of the things that you just nailed is if you're an advisor out there and if your own mental health and the health of your business is directly equated to market performance, then now you've basically put your business, the good days or the bad days, you've weighted that on something you absolutely cannot control, which for anybody that's built any business, they would absolutely say, don't build your business on something based on something you can't control. And so I think if you're an advisor out there and you're like, man, the market's really rough, this next 2 months is going to suck, it probably means you might want to re-examine how you build your plans in the first place, right? And or the conversation that we talked about that's bringing your clients to you and the expectations they have of you and your planning. But the other thing that I really see there is, Nick, you evolved and you grew and you said there has to be a better, different way where I can serve my clients at a higher level. And you were willing to evolve. You were willing to challenge maybe. I see it so often, the advisors that grow up in certain distribution models, just the biases that come along with that. And to your point, it's very much based on how that distribution model gets paid. I was just literally talking with the guy. I don't know if let's just say it's one of the names we all run into over the doors. And he basically said, in my training, I was taught that this financial tool is bad. And by the way, it was an annuity. And to literally say an annuity is bad is to me the equivalent of trying to build a house and saying a hammer is bad. Like the tool is not good or bad. It's what is the use for the tool and what is the proper tool to get the job done, right? And then selecting the best tool out of that category. And I just think there's so much of that going on in finance where it's almost this indoctrination of this is bad. And I believe as a fiduciary, which you all are, you should have as many tools as possible at your disposal. And then you should objectively just choose, hey, here's what we're trying to do. What's the most efficient tool to pull out of my financial toolbox? And let's just go get the job done. And I believe that's kind of what clients love about the plans you all build, right? It's like,
Oh, yeah.
we're not trying to sell you anything. We're trying to build you a great financial plan that gets you from A to B in the most efficient way possible and doesn't create a bunch of anxiety the next time the market corrects. I mean, are those any other thoughts on just kind of the different approach or psychology there?
Yeah, I think to your point, Brad, it's all about the education. We're educating our clients on those tools. We have all of those tools at our disposal. It's a matter of matching up their plan with the correct tool. And it's an educational process. I think we do a pretty good job of actually taking that educational approach. We teach a lot of educational classes. We have for going on 8 years, been teaching a Social Security class, tax and retirement class. But even when we talk about portfolios and other investments, it's all an educational type of an approach. And I think people appreciate that. You don't have to get in the weeds and drown them with the details and alpha and beta and Sharpe ratio and all those crazy things. But if you kind of show them how they work and the pros and cons, then they feel more equipped to understand the plan and execute the plan. And I think early in my career, I was with a broker dealer that was very anti-annuity, and I remember I'd come across someone, I'm like, this doesn't look all that bad. What's the issue with them? And so it was part of the reason I actually went to work for American Equity in their home office. Wasn't real happy with where I was at. And I thought, I'm gonna figure out what's wrong with these or what's right with them. So I got firsthand knowledge of like, there's billions of dollars in this space, and it can't all be that these people were missold. That just doesn't make sense. And just like any, whether it's a stock bond, mutual fund, every financial product has a time and place. It's a matter of pairing up the situation with the right tool. And I think when you take that approach with clients, they appreciate it, and you can be unbiased because ultimately we don't really care what the tool is. We want to do what's best for the client and make sure that they understand it so that they'll execute it. And so I think that's a big shift from, like Nick was talking about, the old, really advisor salesperson model. I mean, I never feel like a salesperson. We're a consultant, an educator, and a leader. It's a lot different than, okay, I got to hit a quota and I got to sell this annuity or this portfolio or whatever it is. It's just a different mindset from our end. And I think that translates across the table to the client. We're like, okay, this is a lot different than when I was at Edward Jones down the street. They're trying to sell me a portfolio versus, and they're calling it a plan. It's really just a portfolio, but they're calling it a plan. And so it's just a different shift, and people, I think they can gravitate towards that, and it makes a huge difference, obviously for us acquiring clients, but it also for the success of the clients to execute the plan and stick to the plan as they age.
Yeah. And how do you beat that up? Like, think about a salesperson versus a planner. How dare you build me a holistic plan that meets my goals, Jeremy? Like you can't beat it up. It's
Exactly.
like, I'm going to listen to what you want. And then as an independent advisor, as a fiduciary that has access to every tool at my disposal, I'm going to try to build you the most efficient plan that gets you from A to B. And then, by the way, as things change in your retirement, we're going to adjust. It's like
hard to object.
It takes you out of like used car salesman language, which, by the way, I was a guy that grew up cold calling advisors to sell annuities. Like, I have felt this on my side. And when you change the conversation into just, we want to lead you, we want to serve you, we want to be transparent on like how we're going to build this and educate you on the tools that we believe you can get you there in the most efficient way. It's like, man, that's like such a noble profession. It completely changes the dynamic of it. I want to make sure we have time, guys. I pulled up, if you guys saw me looking at the other screen, I pulled up your website and I see some of the language on here. We lead and empower our clients to achieve beyond what they thought possible in retirement because they deserve it. I believe that came directly out of kind of the Chris Smith, the brand manifesto work. Is that correct?
Yes, it did.
And how does that get embedded into the conversation in a first visit, in a seminar? Like how has that changed the conversation when you lead with something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that something that we haven't talked about that is really hard to contend with is the way that these potential clients have been trained to think, because all these things that we're talking about like have all been weaponized by advisors to subscribe to their sales process. The word fiduciary has been weaponized. The word fee only.
Yes.
And so all these clients, and I think it was it Kyle Van Pelt? He did a great job of talking about the evolution of, some of these sales process. So I think what that language does in these meetings is it disarms those people. It's like, hey, I totally understand that you've been trained to think that this is the most important thing to solve with a financial advisor. But let's get back to basics for a second. This is about you and living your life. Like, let me tell you what you deserve out of a financial advisor. And they're like, oh, okay. So, and even just saying like, hey, we're passionate about doing the right thing for people. We're passionate about getting information out. Hey, even if we never talk again, or, you just absorb our newsletter or our blogs and that is beneficial to your life, or if we give you great advice in this hour and vision meeting and you get to take that and change the rest of your course, hey, so be it. It's disarming to people. They're like, whoa, I felt no pressure. I felt no sales. I just sat in front of a person that had nothing in mind but my true best interest. And it wasn't weaponized to talk smack about all the other advisors out there. That's super disarming. So we started implementing that language into workshops and seminars almost immediately. at the beginning of every seminar or workshop, we do, by the way, Vantage Point, home of the 6 worlds, not 5 worlds. At the beginning of all of our presentations, we start with, at least in our Chicago office, we start with a presentation of the 6 worlds, and we kind of inject that language right away. Like, hey, having this done right and in your best interest is the way to make your money work harder for you than it's ever worked before. And it's a way to make sure that you live a life and a retirement beyond what you thought possible. Like, you deserve this. And I want you to really think and stop for a second and consider is this something that you already do on your own or with an advisor? And if it's not, then you truly need to start exploring whether or not you could benefit from this. And then since we started doing that, we have people come up to us on the break of these presentations, which, by the way, we're doing a lot of presentations through nonprofits, and we're not allowed to sell. So we cannot make a pitch on our services at these things. And we make that clear. And people come up to us at the break and they're like, hey, so I want to be respectful of the fact that this is through a nonprofit and you're not selling, but like, how soon can we talk about working together? Because that's what I'm interested in. And I'm telling you, like, that's the only thing we changed, is injecting that language and having an authentic message. And it's like, people are knocking on our door now instead of us like trying to find an in to talk to them about our services. It's incredible.
That's cool. And that's the thing that the longer I'm in this industry, I always knew words mattered, but words matter so much. Just and if how intentional you are with them and the way you say them in confidence versus, oh, well, we kind of believe that this, and it's amazing to see that, because number one, you all did the work, which that's the hardest part, is extracting that. And it's deep work, right? You can't kind of half-ass that sort of work. But I want to rewind. Like, it's so fun like I feel like I've known you guys forever, probably because of the Shanty Rose, but we're only really like not even 2 years into this journey. No. And the massive evolution that I've already seen from you all, which is a testament to you all showing up as students, putting in the work, putting in the effort, and then actually implementing the work, into your seminars, into your appointments. But I'm looking at your website right now, and I want to go back because I want to make sure I'm not misremembering this. When we were sitting in SHP's conference room with, Plymouth Harbor right behind us, Keith Ellis in there, probably cracking some awkward jokes like he does, and that's what I love about him. Was the name of your process the Elevated Retirement Plan at that point? I'm trying to remember if you'd named it at that point or not.
No,
Didn't have a
not
name.
even close.
Did you have a name of your, what I would call planning process, or was it just we do financial plans?
Holistic planning.
Yeah, a holistic plan. Come on, Brad.
Nice and
Very-
So,
very
okay,
original.
so this is fun. So you all are now reminding me of a firm I talked with in Kansas City. This is years back. They were managing a billion. By the way, they were managing $1 billion, and had a really cool presence on radio. And I talked with the founder, and I was like, "Well, why are you guys different than other advisors in the Kansas City market?" He goes, and by the way, he said this like not joking. He said this like very with full confidence. He said, "Well, we build financial plans." And I looked at him and I was like, what do you think the other guys say they do? And it was like this big aha moment. He goes, they probably say they build financial plans, don't they? I go, yeah. So how do your prospects know the difference? And so back to your, we build holistic plans. Well, yeah, so does everybody else. Welcome to being a financial advisor. Not everybody, but they probably say
They say they do. They say they do.
Yeah. And but here's what's cool. You guys were actually building great plans. You were doing the hard part of it. It just wasn't packaged and messaged in a way where it differentiated you all, where the people you were talking to knew that you did. And so what I see is we use McDonald's references a lot around here. It's like McDonald's is in the most commoditized business in the world, the hamburger business. So there's a hamburger stand in every small little town, like even Minneapolis, Kansas, that has 2,000 people. But what McDonald's did was productized the hamburger, turned it into something unique to them, the Big Mac, and that's the only place you can get it. Well, you guys take CFP standard-based financial planning and you packaged it, and now you've messaged it in a way that's unique and distinct to you. And I also saw this shift where you were like really trying to charge people, and it was kind of like, well, they're kind of resisting the fee and they're not sure they want to move forward, to where you just changed the game. And you're like, hey, here's what we're about. Here's what we're not. We want to serve you. If you want to take the next step, here's how it works. We move everything over, ACAT it, put the team to work, and we'll move forward. And it was just like, boom, you were off to the races from there. And I think, Nick, your first one was a big one. Like the first time you tried that different conversation, it was a multi-million-dollar case, wasn't it?
Yeah, it worked out quite well. And I was just convicted and like, all right, we're going to try this new approach. And, I've got the old approach and, and standby if we need to at the last minute, but, practice the language a little bit and it worked. I mean, I was when the clients made $4 million and they're great clients now, but when they said, yeah, we'd like to move forward, I was like, wait a minute, did you say yes?
What? Nothing. Hey, what I love, man, is you're like, I'm going to try this new process out, but I'm not going to try it on just like a 500K case. I'm just going to swing for the fences, 4 million right out of the gates. Let's just test it on a big one. But
by the way, that was like
was
2
like
weeks.
Yeah,
that was like 2 weeks after we got back from just being introduced to you guys and SHP out in Boston. And we had first one that was like small, like 500,000. And then within, I think the exact same week, Nick pulled that on the $4 million. And it was like, we just learned this 2 weeks ago.
It was a big mental shift, because the way we did it before was we would present like planning options. We'd quote a fee and we would bill the first half of the fee, do the plan. And then if they implemented the plan and moved their accounts, we'd waive the second half of that fee. So that's kind of how our process worked. And it worked well. I mean, we didn't have we were just a holistic planning process, didn't have it trademarked. And it does work. But what we were finding is that we were doing a lot of plans. We were underpaid for them for sure. And then some people, I mean, a good number of people would implement them. Obviously, we had good numbers, but not all of them, and one of the worst things is what I found was, especially for the people that didn't implement with us, they rarely would come back for like a review. They were basically on their own. So I didn't feel like we were necessarily doing our fiduciary responsibility, because once they paid for the plan, we're not managing their accounts. We typically wouldn't hear from them. And the few people that I did hear from years later, they didn't follow the plan. We couldn't really stay on top of them to make sure they were. So in a sense, we weren't really doing our fiduciary job correctly, I think. Where this one is like, hey, if you want to hire us, we're going to make sure from start to finish, we're going to guide you through every step of it. So it was definitely a mental shift when you've been doing the same thing for several years that wasn't necessarily broken. It's just better now. And I think we're better advisors because of it. But it definitely took a few months to get comfortable with hey, this is our process.
Oh, yeah.
For some of you, it took a few months, a few weeks for others.
By the way, shout out to Nick, because something that I think has been transformative for all of our development, Jeremy, myself, and Nick, is Nick is not scared to jump in and try anything. If all it takes is telling Nick one time that, hey, this worked really well for me, and he's starting his day tomorrow doing that thing. And if left to my own devices, I don't think I would take that approach very often, but it's been a constant driver of moving the needle forward in our business. And every once in a while I meet advisors who, will ask me what's the biggest difference maker to get from where I'm at now to, where I'm at later. And it's try everything. Don't be scared to fail. And I think because of the business we're in, we tell ourselves that we can't fail, it's people's money, or it's, my money, my livelihood, or as entrepreneurs. But what's the harm in trying? You hear something that someone's so convicted, they tell you it works. Well, why wouldn't you try it? Nick does an awesome job of that. And I can stand firmly on saying, I don't think that we would be as far along in our journey as we are if it weren't for that. So for anyone on the fence of trying something new, just do it.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I appreciate it. I just want to mention too, on trademarking your process, Jared, why don't you tell a story about the lady that applied for the job and why and how she found us?
Yeah. So on Monday I did a Zoom interview with a lady that was trying to apply for our associate advisor position. She contacted us through the website. And I didn't know anything about her. It turns out she's works for a holistic planning firm a mile from here. But she said that she was searching all of the independent advisory firms in St. Louis that did actual planning. She really loves the planning side of it. And they do some of it at our office now, but not to the same level that we do. And she said she went through a whole bunch of websites, just did searches. And she said ours stood out the most to her because number one, we had a process, that we documented and we named our process. She's like, I've never seen an independent firm actually trademark their process. And so she knew that immediately we were head and shoulders above everybody else. And she potentially could be a really good advisor. I got 2 new ones starting next month, so she'll definitely be in the pipeline. But just the fact that people are finding us, and we're differentiating ourselves from the competition is a huge benefit. We always kind of hoped that would work that way. But now we're starting to see, in a short period of time that, separating yourself with the language and with what your process is, there's 2 things immediately that's a lot different than everybody else. And it makes a difference. And clearly, I'm hoping that our clients are thinking the same thing. Maybe they don't necessarily tell us. They're coming on board, obviously, but they might not vocalize, hey, you guys are different. But it was just kind of cool to see, that somebody found us and recognized the difference. And she could potentially be a good teammate.
Yeah, a couple things there, guys. So on the last point, if you don't show up different in your space, the only person you can blame as an independent financial advisor is you, the founder. That's your fault, And so if you haven't taken the time to clearly differentiate, trademark, name your process, which by the way, this is work we do all day, every day, because we realize the importance of it. And I've seen the before and after. Exhibit A was SHP. We helped them name their process back in the day. And I met those guys when they were doing 8-10 million a year, and fast forward not even a decade and they're bringing in 250 million plus. And what you just hit, Jeremy, is not just how it shows up to prospects that come in, but how it attracts great talent on the team. And if you're going to scale any business of substance, you've got to attract and keep and train great talent. And so I love that you all are already starting to see that. I want to hit one other thing back to kind of before when you were charging a fee, and it sounds like, hey, if they bought the plan, you kind of gave it to them and they would kind of do the DIY version of it. Nick said something earlier during, we've had some volatility, obviously, around COVID and the market's going a little crazy there. But you said something, Nick, where clients would call you up and basically say, hey, I need one of your pep talks. To me, so much of the power of being a great financial advisor, it's like being a psychologist and a therapist. It's like you're talking people off the ledge where they want to buy high and sell low, like human psychology. And you're like, hey, this is why we have a plan. This is why we're here. Hey, this is why we structured it the way. And you're just reinforcing the reasoning and the purpose behind that plan versus, oh, let's throw everybody in, let's throw all my money in GameStop during COVID because it's like a rocket ship or whatever, And I just love that the process allows you to lean in to the psychology side and the commitment side of like, we're going to guide you and keep you on track. This is not just, here's a plan, good luck. And not that you guys were trying to do that before, it was just the model allowed for that to happen a bit. Is that fair?
100%.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a game changer for our business, game changer for the clients that we meet. Absolutely. It's a win-win.
Well, guys, we're getting to the end. This has been fun. There's been a couple jabs thrown. We worked a little shanty rows in, so I feel like we've checked the major boxes. It's been a really fun conversation. I want to say before we get to the final question here, man, I'm so humbled to have a firm like your all's as a part of the Triad community. Just can't wait to hang here in about a month. And it's just like, that's the whole purpose of Triad, doing business and doing life. We want to do business with people we want to do life with. And it's just a lot of fun to do life with you guys. So it's been really fun to watch the growth, watch the journey, and just thankful that you all are a part of Triad. So thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Feelings mutual.
With that, this is the Do Business, Do Life podcast. So you all have had pretty good experience because we've done some business and done some life. But I would love to hear each of your definitions of how you define doing business and doing life and what that means to you. So whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, I had my thought about this a couple days ago, and I had one particular word, and then this morning I finished the Amy Porterfield podcast, and hers was freedom. That's exactly what I was thinking. So I'm not stealing it from her, but that's really how I think about it. You know, if you're doing business and you're doing life, it really creates freedom. You know, not just for us as individuals, but for our family. And our teammates and our clients. So it's a big combination, but I think at the end of the day, that's really probably what we're all after. And being able to, you know, really integrate, you know, you want that work-life balance, but you really want them integrated so that, you know, you're, you know, like we talked about, a leader for our clients. We also want to be a leader for ourselves and our family and our team, you know. And so it just, it kind of meshes together and into the one word, freedom. That's what it means to me.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And thank you, Brad, for inviting us to join the community. We love Triad. It's been phenomenal. And probably the number one thing I love is the DBDL. I'll be honest, when we first met you, I was like, that seems kind of corny. What is this DBDL? You know, just being, you know, full transparency, but
no, I love it. That's we encourage full transparency on here. So please keep it real.
Yeah. But the more we've gotten to know you guys and the whole community, like, you live by it. You talk about it more than anything. And yes, we've been involved in some really great masterminds and they kind of preach that too, but not to the level you do. And it's not woven into everything that you do. So I really appreciate it because it's like on the forefront of my mind all the time because my family's so important to me. It's not just business all day, every day. But to me, it's not a separation of, all right, I've got business over here where it's all work. And then I've got life over here, family, friends, fun. It's interwoven, and you guys have taught us a lot about hiring and hire great people that you want to be around, that you want to do business with, you want to do life with. And it's so refreshing to come and just, hey, I'm at work with a bunch of my friends, which is really cool. And as we grow the team, we don't lose sight of that. We want to continue that. So for me, it's, you know, it's really kind of weaving them together, but I'm always thinking now, like, so much further ahead, where a couple of years ago it was, you know, I'm going to be an advisor forever. Now I'm thinking about how I can empower other people to do it and help more families so that I can go spend more time with my family and play more golf and travel, things that I want to do outside of work. And so that's been huge. And the thing that you talk a lot about it is you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And the more that we can surround ourselves with great people, that's DBDL in my opinion.
Love it. Thanks for sharing that. Tim?
Man, I don't know how to top those.
Those were good.
Those were some great answers, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad, for having us on here. It's like any opportunity to, you know, give back to you guys in the community and to help is like seriously our pleasure. So thanks for having us today. I feel like one of the reasons I was first interested in working with Nick back in the day was because he kind of had this philosophy, like, I'm not going to work weekends. I don't want to stay here later than I have to. Like, I know that there's a way we can grow a business in a controlled way, a way where we're not wanting to gouge our eyeballs out every day because we can't stand another financial plan on our desk. And I really appreciate that because, like, I never want that. And if you ask anybody, like, what's the dream job for you? It's a lot of people will eventually arrive at some version of an answer that's, I want to work a job that doesn't feel like work. I want it to just feel like something that I wake up to do. Well, and for a lot of people, that's not reality. Like it's really hard to find that. But again, talking about mindset, like it really isn't. And the cool thing about DBDL, just with this community in particular, is we're all in the trenches together. Like, where else can you go that you're around 100+ people where you're like, oh yeah, I did that too. Or, oh yeah, I just had the worst day of my life too. Let's talk about it. Like there is so much to that. And now it's like really transformed into our business here too, where we've just kind of naturally started saying this thing around the office of like what our mission is. And our mission is to help not only our clients, but our team and our community live lives beyond what they thought possible. And I'm excited about that. Like, because the same way we're in the trenches with the Triad community, well, same thing with our team here and same thing with our clients and same thing with our community. And it really is like that integration that it truly doesn't feel like work. It just feels like, showing up to solve problems that I'm passionate about solving, and I get to do it with people that I'm excited to be around, and I'm invested in their lives. Like, I truly want to know how you spent your weekend. I truly want to know the most important things to you. And I'm like confident that through Triad, I've made friends that I'll have for the rest of my life. And for me, DBDL is really just that feeling. It's a pursuit of that feeling that you wake up and it's not work today. It's just another day with people I'm excited to be around, solving problems that we all get to solve together.
Yeah, like today, I was excited to come to this podcast when I woke up. So,
Likewise.
I was too, guys. This is, to me, this is zero work. This is nothing but play. This is so fun. It's funny. My wife will be like, what's on the calendar for today? I'm like, 2 podcast interviews. It's going to be an amazing day because it's with great people that I love being around, that I can learn from, that, oftentimes I challenge my own thinking, and it's just awesome. So guys, the cool thing is this is one of those conversations I feel like it could go for another 2 hours, but unfortunately we all have stuff to do today. But man, thanks so much for just sharing. You guys always play all out. You're givers. You're a great representation of the community, and can't wait to do some life here in a month or so out in Lake Tahoe. So thanks for joining. Thanks for sharing, and till we see each other in person and get a hang.
Thanks for
Also,
having
we
us.
made it through an entire episode without Brad saying deconstruct.
On that note, you've got to go back and listen. If you're going to be a podcast host, you have to go back and every once in a while listen. And everybody's got their filler words. Everybody's got their verbal tics, and it's painful, guys. So I'm sure I had a couple more on this one that I didn't realize. So we'll go back and listen to this one and see what else I have to correct.
Construct it.
See you in Tahoe, Brad. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Brad.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
We'll see you. Bye.